Victoria Jackson and the Sussex grift machine. The woman giving Harry and Meghan the royal life they can no longer afford, complete with lavish homes and a private jet. That devastating headline from the Daily Mail over the weekend of December 7, 2024, exposed what many had suspected but few could prove. Harry and Meghan Markle's lifestyle of mansion hopping and private jet travel wasn't funded by their failed commercial ventures. It was funded by wealthy enablers who loaned them properties worth millions and aircraft that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars per flight. The woman at the center of this revelation was Victoria Jackson, a 70-something cosmetics tycoon with fabulous homes on the Upper East Side in New York, in the heart of Beverly Hills, and in Montecito, California, the same enclave where Harry and Meghan had purchased their $14 million mansion in June 2020. But Jackson's generosity went far beyond occasional favors. According to well-connected sources quoted in the Daily Mail, Meghan and Harry habitually stayed at Jackson's properties whenever they had business in various cities. They had used her sumptuous New York brownstone for years, including during the disputed car chase with paparazzi in May 2023. They had stayed at her Los Angeles mansion just weeks earlier before controversially attending Kris Jenner's 70th birthday party. Meghan had even celebrated her 43rd birthday at Jackson's Montecito estate in August 2024, rather than at her own home. And perhaps most damning of all, Jackson allegedly loaned the couple her Falcon private jet for trips, saving them hundreds of thousands of dollars and allowing them to travel with enhanced security while maintaining the illusion of independent wealth. But why would anyone enable Harry and Meghan's charade? What did Victoria Jackson gain from funding the lifestyle of two failed celebrities whose commercial value had collapsed? And what did this arrangement reveal about the depths of the Sussex grift and the lengths they would go to maintain appearances while their dreams crumbled around them? Join us as we uncover the truth behind the enabler funding the Sussexes, the pattern of wealthy benefactors they've exploited and discarded, and what this dynamic reveals about their complete dependence on others' generosity despite years of claiming they wanted financial independence. It all began quietly with that Harper's Bazaar cover shoot that became an unmitigated disaster. In early December 2024, Harper's Bazaar published a cover feature on Meghan that was meant to relaunch her as a lifestyle guru, a woman of taste and sophistication who could guide others toward better living. The photo shoot, conducted at Victoria Jackson's New York brownstone, featured Meghan in various poses meant to evoke elegance and authenticity. But the reaction was brutal. Social media users immediately noticed that Meghan was cosplaying other successful women, Victoria Beckham in particular, copying poses and styling from previous Beckham photo shoots. The inauthenticity was palpable. And one comparison that went viral showed Meghan next to British football legend David Beckham with the caption, "One is a British legend, the other is Meghan Markle." The numbers told the story of complete rejection. When Netflix released the trailer for Meghan's holiday special, part of her cooking and lifestyle show With Love, Meghan, the metrics were catastrophic. 34,000 dislikes, just 1,900 likes. That ratio, as royal commentator Dan Wooten noted, was a ratio that I don't believe YouTube would ever have seen before. To put those numbers in perspective, for every person who liked the trailer, nearly 18 people actively disliked it enough to click the thumbs down button. That wasn't just indifference, that was active rejection. That was the public telling Meghan, as clearly as possible, that they wanted nothing to do with her or her projects. In response to this disaster, Meghan's team released behind-the-scenes footage meant to humanize her and show the real Meghan at work. But even this backfired spectacularly. The video featured what critics described as a sick fanatic man gushing that Meghan was a 10 out of 10, his adoration so excessive and uncomfortable that it made viewers cringe rather than warm to Meghan. And running through the Harper's Bazaar interview itself was one particularly bizarre moment that captured the artificiality of Meghan's entire persona. At Victoria Jackson's New York brownstone, with no one else home, a house manager announced Meghan's arrival, introducing the Duchess of Sussex. The moment was surreal. Who announces someone when there's no one to announce them to? Why would Meghan need a formal introduction in a borrowed home where she was staying as a guest? And why on earth would she allow this absurd moment to be included in the published interview? As Wooten observed with barely concealed mockery. "There's no one there, and you're not a real duchess." But beneath the ridiculous staging and desperate attempts at appearing regal, the Harper's Bazaar shoot and interview revealed something more troubling: Meghan's complete dependence on Victoria Jackson's generosity. To understand the full significance of Victoria Jackson's role in the Sussex story, we must examine who she is and why she might be enabling their lifestyle. Victoria Jackson built her cosmetics empire from nothing, creating a successful beauty brand that made her wealthy enough to own multiple luxury properties and a private jet. By her 70s, she had achieved the kind of financial success that allowed her to be generous with those she considered friends. But what did she get from her friendship with Meghan and Harry? Access? The ability to say she was friends with a duchess and a prince? The reflected glory of association with royalty, even royalty in exile? According to sources quoted in the Daily Mail, Jackson's properties made the Sussexes' own Montecito mansion look like a prison or a beach shack. The houses were unbelievable, and Harry and Meghan didn't have to pay at all, which was appealing given their financial situation. The pattern Jackson enabled was clear. Rather than living within their means, rather than downsizing when their commercial ventures failed, rather than accepting that their dreams of building an empire had collapsed, Harry and Meghan simply found wealthy enablers who would loan them the lifestyle they felt entitled to. Before Jackson, there had been others. Tyler Perry, the film producer and actor, had famously loaned Harry and Meghan his Los Angeles mansion when they first moved to California in March 2020. He had provided security. He had helped them establish themselves in America. And according to reports, they had turned their backs on him as soon as he was accused of sexual harassment and misconduct, abandoning their benefactor when association with him became inconvenient. Before Perry, there was Elton John, the legendary musician who had loaned them his private jet for various trips and defended them publicly against media criticism. But even Elton John, according to sources, had had enough by late 2024, tired of being exploited for his generosity and resources while getting nothing but headaches in return. The pattern revealed something ugly about Harry and Meghan's characters. They would accept help, support, generosity, and protection from wealthy benefactors. But the moment those benefactors became liabilities or stopped being useful, they would be discarded without gratitude or loyalty. As Brittany, editor of the Royal News Network, observed during a December broadcast, "The grift is back on. The grift is always back on. And you gotta say that Harry and Meghan are always looking for somebody to fund their lifestyle because they cannot do it on their own." But Victoria Jackson was different from Perry and John in one crucial respect. She seemed willing to continue enabling indefinitely. Perhaps she valued the association more than they had. Perhaps she was wealthy enough that the cost didn't matter. Perhaps she genuinely believed in Meghan and Harry's potential despite all evidence to the contrary. Whatever her motivation, Jackson had become essential to maintaining the Sussex illusion. Without her properties to stay in, without her jet to fly on, without her willingness to subsidize their lifestyle, Harry and Meghan's facade of success and independence would collapse entirely. The relationship dynamics revealed by the Victoria Jackson story extended far beyond just one wealthy enabler and two grifting celebrities. They touched on broader questions about what happens when people who have known only privilege suddenly face the reality that they're no longer wanted, valued, or commercially viable. Harry had grown up as a prince, living in palaces, traveling on royal aircraft, having every need met by staff funded by the sovereign grant. He had never had to worry about money, earn his own living, or manage a household budget. Even his military service, while genuine, had been facilitated by his royal status and connections. Meghan had experienced more financial struggle during her Hollywood years, but even then, she had been supported by her first husband, Trevor Engelson, who used his industry connections to help her career. And once she married Harry on May 19, 2018, she immediately had access to royal resources that made her previous life seem impoverished by comparison. Neither of them had ever truly been financially independent. Neither of them had ever built something substantial through their own efforts. And when they left royal life claiming they wanted to earn their own money and build their own empire, they discovered something uncomfortable. Without the royal platform, without the institutional support, Without the carefully managed image and access that came with being working royals, they had nothing to offer that anyone actually wanted to pay for. The Spotify deal, worth $20 million, produced just 12 podcast episodes before being terminated in June 2023. Spotify's head of podcast innovation, Bill Simmons, called them fucking grifters after the deal collapsed. The Netflix deal, initially worth $100 million, produced diminishing returns. Their documentary, Harry and Meghan, released in December 2022, generated viewership but also tremendous backlash. Subsequent projects failed to capture audience interest. With Love, Meghan, the cooking and lifestyle show that was supposed to establish Meghan as America's answer to Martha Stewart or Gwyneth Paltrow, was generating 34,000 dislikes versus 1,900 likes. Harry's memoir, Spare, published in January 2023, sold well initially but damaged his reputation so severely that future commercial prospects evaporated. Who wanted to hire a man who had written about using his mother's Elizabeth Arden cream on his frostbitten genitals? Who wanted to work with someone who had exposed intimate family conversations and physical altercations with his brother? And so they turned to enablers like Victoria Jackson, people who, for whatever reason, were willing to fund the lifestyle Harry and Meghan felt entitled to, even as their commercial value collapsed and their relevance faded. But there was another element to the Jackson story that made it particularly significant: the comparison to Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. The turning point in understanding the Sussex trajectory came with news that Sarah Ferguson, Prince Andrew's ex-wife, was considering offers for a tell-all television interview. According to reports in early December 2024, multiple American television channels were willing to pay substantial sums for Sarah's first major interview, since she had essentially lost her Duchess of York status following her divorce from Andrew in May 1996. Palace aides were reportedly worried about what Sarah might say, fearing she would go rogue now that she was definitively out of the royal family's protection. And the frontrunner to conduct the interview? Oprah Winfrey, the same woman who had given Harry and Meghan their platform for attacking the royal family in March 2021. The parallels between Sarah's situation and Meghan's were striking and deeply unflattering to Meghan. Both women had married into the royal family with great fanfare and public support. Both had struggled with the constraints of royal life. Both had scandals that damaged their reputations. Both had been cut loose from royal protection and funding, and both, ultimately, had turned to monetizing their royal connections through tell-all interviews and commercial ventures that exploited their titles while offering little of substance. But as Britney observed during the broadcast, there was one crucial difference in timing. In 30 years, Sarah is what Meghan will become. The prediction was devastating in its implications. Sarah Ferguson, at 70 in 2024, was still desperately seeking money through whatever means available. She had written children's books, romance novels, diet books, anything that might generate income. She had done commercial endorsements that cheapened her image. She had associated with Jeffrey Epstein in an attempt to get money, a decision that haunted her reputation permanently. And now, decades after leaving royal life, she was still trading on her connection to the monarchy through tell-all interviews, still unable to build anything substantial on her own, still dependent on the declining value of her royal association. If that was Meghan's future, 30 years of increasingly desperate attempts to stay relevant, 30 years of grifting and enabling relationships, 30 years of declining commercial value as her royal connection became less and less interesting to audiences, then her entire post-royal strategy had been a catastrophic failure. As Britney noted, Sarah has always gone to where there is cash. She is always in debt, and so she's pretty much willing to do almost anything, contact anyone. This is how we got into the Jeffrey Epstein situation in the first place for her, willing to seek out anyone in order to make some money. The description could just as easily apply to Meghan in 2024, always seeking wealthy enablers, always willing to exploit connections, always positioning herself as a victim while behaving like an opportunist. The trajectory was identical, just at different stages of decline. But the Sarah comparison revealed something else about the royal family's strategic thinking. King Charles had reportedly argued that one reason he had tried to keep Sarah in the fold to some degree, allowing her to attend some family events and maintaining some connection, was precisely to prevent the kind of tell-all interviews and commercial exploitation that would damage the institution. By cutting Sarah loose completely, by stripping her of status and protection, the palace had created the conditions that would lead to her tell-all interviews. She had nothing to lose because she had already lost everything. The palace's only leverage, access to family events and some degree of rehabilitation, had been removed. And the same dynamic was playing out with Harry and Meghan. By excluding them from family events, by refusing to include them in plans like America's 250th birthday celebrations in July 2025, by treating them as pariahs, the palace was ensuring they would continue attacking the institution. They had nothing to lose and everything to gain from continued controversy. But the palace had learned a hard lesson from Sarah. Better to face attacks from outside than to enable bad behavior from within. Better to cut toxic family members loose and deal with the consequences than to keep them close and have them damage the institution from the inside. The legacy of the Victoria Jackson enabler story, the Harper's Bazaar disaster, and the Sarah Ferguson comparison will shape how we understand the Sussex saga for decades. First, there's the impact on Harry and Meghan's remaining credibility. Every revelation about wealthy enablers funding their lifestyle, every piece of evidence showing they're dependent on others despite claiming independence, every comparison to Sarah Ferguson's decades of desperate grifting chips away at whatever sympathy or support they might still have. People who initially supported their departure from royal duties, who believed their claims of wanting freedom and independence, who thought they were courageous for choosing their own path, increasingly see them as entitled grifters who want royal lifestyle without royal duty. Second, there's the impact on Victoria Jackson and other potential enablers. By exposing Jackson's role so publicly, the Daily Mail made it uncomfortable for her to continue supporting the Sussexes at the same level. Other wealthy people who might have considered helping Harry and Meghan now know that their generosity will be publicized, scrutinized, and used as evidence of the Sussexes' grifting. The enabler ecosystem that Harry and Meghan depend on is shrinking. Tyler Perry is out. Elton John is apparently done. Victoria Jackson is now publicly exposed. Who's next? And how long before there are no more wealthy suckers willing to be used? Third, there's the impact on how the royal family handles rogue relatives going forward. The palace learned from Sarah Ferguson that cutting people loose completely leads to decades of tell-all interviews and commercial exploitation. But they also learned from Andrew that keeping problematic family members too close damages the institution's reputation. The strategy emerging with Harry and Meghan appears to be strategic isolation combined with patience. Exclude them from events. Refuse to respond to their attacks. Let their commercial ventures fail. Wait for their relevance to fade. And eventually, in a decade or two, perhaps there can be some limited rehabilitation once the damage has been forgotten and they're no longer threats to the institution. Fourth, there's the brutal reality of the 30-year prediction. If Britney is right, if Meghan's future is to become like Sarah Ferguson, spending decades desperately seeking money through whatever means available, never building anything substantial, never achieving the independence and success she claimed to want, then the entire post-royal project has been a tragic waste. Meghan could have been a working royal, using her platform for genuine good, supporting worthy causes, having real impact on issues she cared about. Instead, she chose controversy, victimhood, and commercial exploitation. And the price for that choice is becoming the next Sarah Ferguson, a cautionary tale about what happens when you trade lasting purpose for temporary profits. Finally, there's the question of what could have been. Harry and Meghan had everything: global fame, a platform that billions would dream of, the resources to make real change on causes they cared about, the support of an institution with centuries of experience in effective charitable work, and they threw it all away because they wanted to be independently wealthy, because they couldn't accept the constraints that came with being working royals, because Meghan in particular couldn't bear not being the star of every show. Now they're dependent on Victoria Jackson's generosity, generating 34,000 dislikes for their projects, watching Sarah Ferguson become a preview of their own future, and desperately trying to maintain the illusion that they're successful and independent even as the evidence of their failure mounts daily. Even in their attempts to relaunch through projects like the Harper's Bazaar shoot, even in their behind-the-scenes videos showing fanatic supporters calling Meghan a 10 out of 10, even in their continued exploitation of royal titles and connections, the voice that emerges is always desperate, always inauthentic, always the sound of people who know they're failing but refuse to admit it. The story of Victoria Jackson enabling the Sussexes is ultimately about the price of pride and the consequences of choosing image over substance. Harry and Meghan want to appear wealthy, successful, and independent. So they find enablers like Jackson who will loan them the props needed to maintain that illusion. But the illusion is crumbling. The 34,000 dislikes tell the truth that Meghan doesn't want to hear. The Daily Mail exposure of Jackson's support reveals the grift that Harry and Meghan tried to hide. The comparison to Sarah Ferguson shows where this path leads over decades of decline. And through it all, the enablers like Victoria Jackson keep the whole charade going, funding a lifestyle Harry and Meghan can no longer afford, supporting delusions they should have abandoned years ago, and ensuring that when the final collapse comes, it will be all the more spectacular for how long it was delayed. What do you think? Should Victoria Jackson stop enabling Harry and Meghan's charade? Is the comparison to Sarah Ferguson fair? Or is it premature to predict Meghan will follow the same path? And what does the 34,000 to 1,900 like ratio tell us about whether anyone actually wants what Meghan is trying to sell? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this investigation valuable, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth reporting on the stories the mainstream media is afraid to tell. Because sometimes the most revealing stories aren't about what people achieve, but about who pays for them to pretend they're still achieving. And in the case of Harry and Meghan, that benefactor is Victoria Jackson, the enabler keeping the grift alive for reasons only she can explain.